Axel stood in the driveway, the summer night heavy with the scent of jasmine and betrayal. His phone glowed in his hand, a single photo burning into his soul. His wife, Mara, laughing in another man's arms, her wedding ring glinting like a lie. The message beneath it, from an unknown number, was a dagger. "She's not who you think. Ask about her Thursdays." His heart pounded, but his face remained still, a mask forged in the fire of a truth he could no longer ignore. The kitchen was quiet, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional clink of Mara's spoon against her coffee mug. Axel sat across from her, his hands folded on the table, his eyes tracing the familiar lines of her face. At 35, Mara was still striking, dark hair cascading over her shoulders, hazel eyes that once held warmth but now seemed to flicker with secrets. They'd been married 7 years, a partnership built on late-night talks and shared dreams of a family. But lately, those dreams felt like echoes, drowned out by her late nights and vague excuses. "Busy day at the gallery?" Axel asked, his voice steady, though his chest tightened. Thursdays were her gallery nights, or so she'd said, curating exhibits, meeting clients. He'd never questioned it, trusting her as he always had. Mara nodded, barely looking up. "Yeah, the new artist is a nightmare. Demanding, you know." She sipped her coffee, her fingers brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was familiar, but it felt rehearsed, like a line in a play she performed too many times. Axel's gaze drifted to the photo frame on the counter. Their wedding day, Mara's smile radiant, his own face alight with hope. That was before the silences grew, before her best friend, Lena, became a constant presence, her sharp laughter and knowing smirks filling their home like smoke. Lena, with her designer bags and endless gossip, had always rubbed Axel the wrong way, but he tolerated her for Mara's sake. Now, the anonymous photo on his phone, sent last night while he sat alone in their living room, cast Lena in a new light. The message had been clear: ask about her Thursdays. He hadn't confronted Mara yet. The photo, showing her with a man he didn't recognize, was a wound too raw to touch. Instead, he watched her, searching for cracks in the facade she wore so well. "You've been spending a lot of time with Lena," he said, keeping his tone light. "She's still stirring up drama?" Mara's spoon paused mid-stir, a flicker of tension crossing her face before she smiled. "You know Lena, always got some crisis or another. She's just going through stuff." She stood, rinsing her mug in the sink, her movements quick, as if eager to escape the conversation. Axel nodded, his jaw tight. He wanted to believe her, to cling to the life they'd built, a cozy suburban house, his steady job as a software engineer, her passion for art. But the photo was a splinter in his mind, and Lena's influence was a hand driving it deeper. He'd seen the text between them, glimpses of Mara's phone screen when she thought he wasn't looking. "Live a little, M. You deserve it. He'll never know." Lena's words, dripping with encouragement, had been vague but damning. After Mara left for work, Axel sat in his home office, the morning light filtering through blinds. His desk was cluttered with code printouts, but his focus was elsewhere. He opened his phone, the photo staring back at him. The man's face was partially obscured, but the setting, a dimly lit bar, Mara's hand on his arm, was unmistakable. Axel's stomach churned, but he forced himself to stay calm. Rage wouldn't help. He needed answers, and he needed a plan. He started small, checking Mara's social media, something he'd rarely done. Her posts were polished, all gallery openings and artful coffee shots, but nothing from Thursdays. Lena's page was louder, selfies, cryptic captions, and a recent photo of her and Mara at a bar, the same bar from the anonymous photo. The timestamp was 3 weeks ago, a Thursday. Axel's pulse quickened. He cross-referenced Mara's credit card statements, a task that felt like a betrayal of its own. There was weekly charges at the Velvet Room, a downtown bar, every Thursday for 2 months. No gallery events, just lies. The realization hit like a slow, heavy wave. Mara was cheating, and Lena was her cheerleader, egging her on. Axel leaned back, his breath shallow, the room suddenly too small. He wanted to storm into the gallery, to demand the truth, but he stopped himself. Confrontation would only give Mara a chance to spin more lies, and Lena would be there, smirking, ready to twist a knife. No, he needed to be smarter, to turn their deception back on them. His phone buzzed. A text from his old friend, Javier, a private investigator who'd left the force to start his own firm. They bonded over beers and shared cynicism years ago. And now Javier was the only person Axel trusted with this. Lunch today? Been too long, man. Axel hesitated, then typed back. Yeah, but I need your help. Something big. At the diner, Javier listened as Axel laid out the photo, the text, Lena's influence. Javier's dark eyes narrowed, his fingers tapping the table. Sounds like you've got a snake in your house, he said, his voice low. I can dig into this guy, track Mara's movements. But you sure you want to know? Truth like this, it changes you. Axel nodded, his face a mask of resolve. I need to know, and I need leverage. Javier studied him, then nodded. All right, I'll start with a bar. See who this guy is. But Axel, whatever you're planning, keep it tight. People like Lena, they thrive on chaos. Don't give her an opening. The rest of the day, Axel moved through his routine like a man underwater, his thoughts a tangle of pain and strategy. He cooked dinner, smiled when Mara came home, even laughed at her story about a difficult client. But behind the facade, he was building a plan, a blade he'd sharpen in secret. Mara and Lena thought they'd outsmarted him, that he was just a dependable husband, blind to their games. They were wrong. As he lay in bed that night, Mara's breathing soft beside him, Axel stared at the ceiling, the anonymous message replaying in his mind. Someone had seen the truth and chosen to warn him. That meant cracks in Mara's world, vulnerabilities he could exploit. He closed his eyes, his heart steady despite the ache. This wasn't about destruction, it was about justice. And when the time came, he'd make sure they felt the weight of their own lies. The hum of Axel's computer filled a small office in his suburban home, a space once filled with his quiet pride as a software engineer. Now it felt like a cage, the walls closing in with every keystroke. It had been 2 weeks since the anonymous photo arrived, shattering the illusion of his marriage. The image of Mara, laughing in another man's arms, was burned into his mind, a wound that bled into every corner of his life. He sat at his desk, staring at a half-finished code script, his fingers frozen. Focus was a luxury he no longer had. The betrayal seeped into everything. At work, his colleagues noticed his distraction, missed deadlines, curt responses in meetings. You okay, man? His team lead had asked, concern creasing his brow. Axel had forced a smile, muttering about a rough patch, but the lie tasted bitter. He wasn't okay. He was unraveling, his self-worth crumbling under the weight of Mara's deception and Lena's venomous influence. The man who'd built a stable life, who believed in love and trust, felt like a fool. Mornings were the worst. Mara moved through their routine with an ease that stung, kissing his cheek, chatting about her day, as if nothing had changed. Axel played along, his voice calm, his face a mask, but each interaction was a knife twist. He watched her closely now, noting the small tells, the way her eyes darted to her phone, the quick smile when Lena's name popped up. Thursdays were the hardest, when she'd leave for her supposed gallery nights, her perfume lingering like a taunt. Last night, she'd come home at midnight, her cheeks flushed, claiming a client dinner ran late. Axel had nodded, his heart a stone, and said nothing. The doubt was relentless. Had he missed the signs? Was he not enough? Too predictable, too steady? He'd always prided himself on being the rock in their marriage, the one who fixed problems, who planned for their future. Now, he questioned everything, even the memories he'd cherished. Mara's laughter on their honeymoon, her hand in his during quiet nights. Were they lies too? The questions gnawed at him, eroding the man he thought he was. One evening, alone in the house, the weight became too much. Axel sat on the living room couch, a beer in hand, the TV muted. The photo frame on the mantel, Mara and him at a vineyard, her smile bright, mocked him. He stood, his movement slow, and picked it up. His thumb traced the glass, and then, without warning, a sob broke free. The frame slipped from his hands, shattering on the hardwood floor. He sank to his knees, glass crunching beneath him, his breast ragged. "Why?" he whispered, the word to plead no one. The silence answered back, cold and unyielding. He stayed there until the tears dried, the shards of glass a mirror for his fractured world. But in that collapse, a spark flickered. He couldn't keep living like this, a shadow in his own life. Mara and Lena had underestimated him, banking on his trust, his patience. They thought they'd won. They were wrong. Axel cleaned the glass, his hand steady despite the ache in his chest. He opened his laptop and created a new encrypted folder labeled Thursday. Inside, he began compiling what he knew. Screenshots of Mara's credit card charges, timestamps from Lena's social media, the anonymous photo. Javier had come through, delivering a thin dossier on the man in the photo, a gallery client named Ethan, a wealthy art collector with a reputation for fleeting affairs. Javier's report confirmed Ethan's presence at the Velvet Room every Thursday, Mara at his side. The details were a punch, but they also sharpened Axel's focus. Knowledge was power, and he was gathering it piece by piece. He started small, testing the waters. At dinner, he casually mentioned the Velvet Room, watching Mara's reaction. "Heard it's a hot spot downtown," he said, slicing a steak. "You ever been?" Her fork paused, a flicker of tension in her jaw before she laughed. "Once or twice, maybe. It's loud, not my scene." The lie was smooth, but Axel caught the way her eyes avoided his. He nodded, his face neutral, filing the moment away. Lena's visits were another battlefield. She breezed into their home one Saturday, her perfume sharp, her voice dripping with condescension. "Axel, you're looking tired," she said, her smirk a challenge. He smiled, offering her a drink, his calmest shield. "Just keeping busy, Lena. You know how it is." She laughed, but her eyes lingered, as if sensing a shift she couldn't place. Axel used her visits to listen, picking up scraps of her conversations with Mara, vague plans, mentions of Ethan, coded phrases like, "our little escape." Each word was a brick in the wall. He was building. Javier became his anchor, meeting him at the diner every few days. Over greasy burgers, Javier shared updates. Ethan's financial ties to the gallery, Lena's history of meddling in relationships, even a burner phone linked to the anonymous tip. "Someone's watching them," Javier said, his voice low. "Could be a scorned ex, a rival. Whoever it is, they're on your side." Axel nodded, his mind racing. The tipster was a wild card, but their message had given him a start. He owed them that much. Late at night, when Mara slept, Axel worked in the office. His laptop's glowed the only light. He sketched out ideas, not just evidence, but a plan. He wasn't after petty revenge. He wanted something deeper, a reckoning that would expose Mara and Lena's betrayal without destroying himself. He researched the gallery's finances, noting Ethan's investments, Lena's role as a silent partner. There were cracks there, vulnerabilities he could exploit. He wrote a single word on a sticky note and taped it to his monitor, "Justice." The phone buzzed. Another text from the anonymous number. "Lena's pushing her too far. Check Ethan's emails." Axel's breath caught. The tipster was still out there, feeding him ammunition. He didn't know how to access Ethan's emails yet, but the message was a sign. His plan was gaining momentum, a tide he could ride if he stayed sharp. As he closed the laptop, Axel glanced at the empty space where the wedding photo had been. The pain was still there, a dull ache, but it was no longer paralyzing. He was changing, not into a man consumed by anger, but one forged by clarity. Mara and Lena thought they held the strings, but Axel was cutting them one by one. The audience they didn't know they had him was watching, and soon they'd face the stage he was setting. The air in the house felt thinner now, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Axel moved through his days with mechanical precision, his smile a practice shield, his words carefully chosen. 3 weeks had passed since the anonymous photo exposed Mara's affair, and while the pain of her betrayal still lingered, Axel was no longer drowning in it. He was reshaping it, channeling it into a quiet, deliberate strength. To Mara, he was the same dependable husband, calm, attentive, unassuming. But beneath the surface, he was a man carving a path to justice, gathering the pieces of her deception with surgical care. Mara hadn't noticed a shift in him, or she had. She chalked it up to his work stress. She was too consumed by her own secrets. Thursday nights at the Velvet Room with Ethan, her laughter sharper now, her excuses flimsier. Lena's presence was a constant, her barbed comments and sly glances a reminder of her role as the instigator. Axel watched them both, his eyes sharp behind a facade of indifference, cataloging every slip, every lie. He was pulling away emotionally, brick by brick, his heart no longer tethered to the woman he'd vowed to love. The love was gone, replaced by a cold clarity. His evenings were spent in the home office, the door locked, his laptop a portal to Mara's hidden world. Javier, his private investigator friend, had become a lifeline, delivering intel with the precision of a sniper. Ethan, the art collector, was more than a fling. He was funneling money into Mara's gallery, a financial tie that raised red flags. Lena, it turned out, was skimming a cut, her silent partnership, a secret even from some gallery staff. Axel stored this in his encrypted Thursday folder, alongside credit card records, social media screenshots, and Javier's photos of Mara and Ethan at the bar. But he needed more, something undeniable, something that would expose them without giving them room to spin. He began testing their defenses, subtle moves to gauge their reactions. At breakfast, he'd mention a new project at work, one that might require late nights, watching Mara's face for relief or guilt. "Sounds intense," she'd say, her tone too casual, her eyes on her phone. Lena was harder to read, her confidence a fortress, but Axel noticed her watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. He kept his interactions with her brief, his tone polite but distant, giving her no ammunition. His evidence gathering was methodical. He installed a tracking app on Mara's phone, a decision that felt like a betrayal of his own values but was justified by necessity. The app logged her locations, confirming her Thursday visits to the Velvet Room and occasional stops at Ethan's upscale condo. Axel cross-referenced these with gallery schedules, building a timeline of her lies. He also dug into Ethan's digital footprint, using his coding skills to probe for weaknesses. The anonymous tipster's latest message, "Check Ethan's emails," had been a challenge, but Axel was closing in. He'd found a poorly secured cloud account linked to Ethan's gallery dealings, and with a few hours of careful hacking, he was in. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday night, the house quiet except for the patter of drops against the windows. Mara was at a client meeting, and Axel sat in his office, scrolling through Ethan's emails. Most were mundane, art deals, invoices, but one thread stopped him cold. It was between Ethan and Lena, dated 2 months ago, before the affair began. Lena's message was blunt. "Mara's restless. She needs a spark. You're her type. Make a move, and I'll handle the fallout." Ethan's reply was coy. "You sure she's game? Don't want to mess." Lena's response was chilling. "She's bored with Axel. Trust me, she'll thank us later." Axel's breath caught, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. This was it. The smoking gun, proof that Lena had orchestrated the affair, manipulating Mara like a puppet. The email thread continued, detailing their plan to keep Axel in the dark, even joking about his boring routine. The words cut, but they also ignited something in Axel, a surge of power. He had the upper hand now, a weapon that could dismantle their carefully crafted lies. He saved emails, encrypting them in his folder, and leaned back, his mind racing. The discovery was a pivot, shifting his plan from defense to offense. He wasn't just gathering evidence anymore. He was building a trap. Lena's arrogance, Mara's complicity, Ethan's opportunism, they'd all underestimated him, assuming he'd crumble or stay blind. But Axel was neither. He was a man with a purpose, and the emails were his leverage. The next day, he tested the waters again, this time with Lena. She dropped by unannounced, her perfume cloying, her smile sharp. "You're quiet lately, Axel," she said, lounging on their couch. "Everything okay with you and Mara?" Her tone was teasing, but her eyes were probing, searching for cracks. Axel met her gaze, his expression mild, just focused on work. Big things coming. He let the words hang, vague but waited, and saw a flicker of unease in her posture. She recovered quickly, laughing it off, but the seed was planted. He wanted her to wonder, to feel the first stirrings of doubt. Mara was trickier. Her guilt was there, buried under layers of denial, and Axel began to mirror her distance. He stopped initiating affection, letting her come to him, and when she did, he was warm but reserved. "You seem off," she said one night, her brow furrowed as they sat on the couch. Axel shrugged, his voice soft. "Just thinking about the future, what we really want." Her eyes widened, but she didn't press, retreating to her phone instead. The tension between them was palpable, a silent acknowledgement that something was shifting. Javier met him at the diner the next day, sliding a USB drive across the table. "More on Ethan's finances," he said. "Guy's over-leveraged, using the gallery to prop up his lifestyle. If that crashes, he's done." Axel pocketed the drive, his mind already weaving this into his plan. The gallery was the linchpin, Mara's passion, Lena's side hustle, Ethan's facade. If he could expose their financial misconduct alongside the affair, the fallout would be catastrophic. As he walked home, the rain had stopped, leaving the air sharp and clean. Axel felt the weight of the USB drive, the emails, the timeline. A growing arsenal. The audience, Mara, Lena, Ethan, didn't know they were being watched, their every move cataloged. But they would soon. Axel's calm was his armor, his plan a blade honed in secret. The turning point had given him clarity. This wasn't about revenge for its own sake. It was about exposing the truth, stripping away their masks and reclaiming his own worth. The stage was set, and the curtain was about to rise. The glow of Axel's laptop cast long shadows across his home office, the only light in a house that no longer felt like a home. It was past midnight, Mara asleep upstairs, her lies a silent weight between them. Axel sat at his desk, his fingers moving with purpose as he finalized the first phase of his plan. The encrypted Thursday folder was now a vault of evidence. Ethan's emails with Lena, Mara's track movements, financial records tying the gallery to Ethan's over-leveraged empire. Each piece was a thread in a net he was weaving, one that would ensnare Mara, Lena, and Ethan without them seeing it close. Axel's calm was his greatest weapon. To Mara, he was still the steady husband, cooking dinner, asking about her day. To Lena, he was a quiet man in the background, unworthy of her attention. But behind the facade, he was a strategist, his every move calculated to expose their betrayal. The anonymous tipster's emails had given him an edge, and Javier's intel had sharpened it. Now it was time to act, to let the first ripples of consequence lap at their feet. His plan was multi-layered, designed to unravel their world from the inside. The gallery was a key, Mara's pride, Lena's side hustle, Ethan's financial crutch. Axel had spent weeks digging into its books, using his coding skills to trace transactions through Ethan's cloud account. He'd found discrepancies, inflated invoices, payment to shell companies, Lena's consulting fees siphoned off the top. It was fraud, sloppy enough to collapse under scrutiny. But Axel didn't want a quick takedown. He wanted them to feel the ground shift beneath them, to taste the uncertainty they'd forced on him. He started with a subtle push. Through an anonymous email account, he sent a tip to a local art blog known for exposing gallery scandals. The message was brief, hinting at financial irregularities at Mara's gallery, with just enough detail, dates, transaction IDs, to spark interest. He didn't mention names. Not yet. Let them investigate. Let the whispers begin. The blog posted a vague piece the next day, titled, "Trouble Brewing at Downtown Gallery?" It was a pebble in the pond, but Axel saw the ripples in Mara's face when she read it at breakfast, her fingers tightening around her phone. "You okay?" he asked, his tone gentle, his eyes sharp. She forced a smile, but her voice was tight. "Just some stupid rumor online. It'll blow over." She didn't meet his gaze, and Axel noted the crack in her composure, filing it away. Lena was next. Axel knew her weakness, her need for control, her inflated sense of invincibility. He'd overheard her bragging about a new client, a wealthy collector named Victor, who was investing heavily in the gallery. Axel cross-checked Victor's name against Javier's intel and found a connection. Victor was a stickler for transparency, with a history of pulling funds from shady ventures. Axel crafted another anonymous email, this time to Victor's assistant, attaching a single redacted document, a payment to one of Lena's shell companies, labeled consulting. No accusations, just a suggestion of impropriety. He sent it, then waited. The fallout came faster than he'd expected. Victor called an emergency meeting with the gallery, demanding an audit. Mara came home that night, her face pale, her usual poise fraying. "It's a mess," she said, pouring a glass of wine with trembling hands. "Some investors freaking out over nothing. Lena's handling it, but..." She trailed off, and Axel nodded, his expression sympathetic, his mind cataloging her stress. Lena's texts to Mara, which Axel now monitored through the tracking app, were frantic. "We need to clean this up. Now." The consequences were small but deliberate, cracks in their carefully curated world. Axel watched them squirm, his calm exterior unshaken. He was distancing himself further, his emotional ties to Mara severed, though the act of living with her was a daily test of restraint. He stopped asking about her Thursdays, letting her fill the silence with lies. When Lena visited, he was polite but aloof, his words laced with just enough ambiguity to keep her off balance. "Big things happening at work," he'd say, smiling faintly, and she'd tilt her head, searching for a threat she couldn't name. Javier was his shadow partner, meeting him at the diner to strategize. "You're playing with fire," Javier said, sliding a new report across the table. "Ethan's getting sloppy, using gallery funds for personal debts. If you leak this, he's done." Axel pocketed the report, his mind already weaving it into the next phase. "Not yet," he said. "I want them to feel it coming first." The turning point had given him confidence, but a new message from the anonymous tipster added fuel. It arrived late one night, as Axel reviewed his plan. "Lena's meeting Ethan tomorrow, 8 p.m. Velvet Room. Record it. She's slipping." Axel's pulse quickened. The tipster was still out there, a ghost feeding him ammunition. He didn't know their motives, but their timing was impeccable. He called Javier, who agreed to stake out the bar with discreet recording gear. If Lena and Ethan were careless, Axel would have their voices, their admissions, to add to his arsenal. The next evening, Axel sat in the living room, Mara at the gallery, his phone buzzing with Javier's update. "Got it. Audio's clear." Lena's panicking about the audit. Ethan's talking about cutting ties. Axel listened to the file Javier sent, his jaw tight. Lena's voice was sharp, desperate. "If Victor pulls out, we're screwed. Mara's too soft for this." Ethan's reply was colder. "Then we ditch her. She's a liability." The betrayal within betrayal stung, but also clarified Axel's path. Mara was a pawn in their game, but she'd chosen to play. He saved the audio, his plan crystallizing. The blog post, Victor's audit, the audio, these were warning shots. The final move would be bigger, a public reckoning that would strip away their masks. He began drafting a script, a presentation of sorts, though he hadn't chosen the stage yet. The gallery's upcoming showcase, a high-profile event with collectors and media, loomed as a possibility. If he could expose their fraud and infidelity there, in front of their world, the impact would be seismic. As he closed his laptop, Axel glanced at the empty space where their wedding photo once stood. The pain was a dull echo now, overshadowed by purpose. Mara and Lena thought they'd outplayed him, but the game was shifting. The audience, their clients, their peers, the city, would soon see them for what they were. Axel's quiet confidence was a blade, and he was ready to draw blood, leaving just enough mystery to keep them guessing until the final stroke. The gallery's showcase was a glittering affair, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and a hum of cultured voices. Glass walls reflected the city's skyline, and Mara's latest exhibit, a series of abstract paintings, drew murmurs of praise from collectors and critics. She stood at the center, radiant in a sleek black dress, her smile polished but brittle. Lena hovered nearby, her eyes darting, her usual swagger dimmed by the audit's shadow. Ethan, the art collector, mingled with investors, his charm a thin veneer over mounting debts. Axel watched from the edge of the room, a glass of wine in hand, his face a mask of calm. Tonight, their world would unravel, and he was the architect of its collapse. For months had passed since the anonymous photo exposed Mara's affair, and Axel had spent every moment since building this moment. His plan was a symphony of evidence and timing. Each note played with precision. The blog post had sown doubt. Victor's audit had cracked the gallery's facade, and Javier's audio had captured Lena and Ethan's betrayal. The anonymous tipster's final message, received days ago, had been a catalyst. The showcase is your stage. End it there. Axel didn't know who they were, a scorned ally or rival, but their guidance had sharpened his resolve. This wasn't just revenge. It was justice, a reckoning for the lies that had shattered his life. He'd chosen the showcase for its audience, collectors, media, the city's elite. The gallery was Mara's pride, Lena's hustle, Ethan's lifeline. Exposing their fraud and infidelity, here would be a blow they couldn't dodge. Axel had spent weeks preparing, working with Javier to compile a dossier. Ethan's emails plotting the affair with Lena, financial records of their fraud, audio of their callous scheming. He'd also enlisted Sarah, a junior curator at the gallery who'd grown wary of Lena's manipulations. Sarah, loyal but disillusioned, had agreed to help, slipping Axel access to the gallery's projection system. As Mara took the stage to introduce the exhibit, Axel nodded to Sarah, stationed at the AV booth. The lights dimmed, and the screen behind Mara flickered. Instead of the planned slideshow, a single email appeared, blown up for all to see. Lena to Ethan, urging him to seduce Mara, mocking Axel's boring life. Gasps rippled through the crowd, Mara's face paling as she turned to the screen. Before she could speak, the display shifted, bank statements showing Lena's siphoned fees, Ethan's diverted funds, invoices tied to shell companies. The final blow was the audio, Lena's voice crackling through the speakers. Mara's too soft for this. Ditch her. The room erupted, whispers turning to shouts. Mara stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock, while Lena lunged toward the booth, screaming at Sarah to stop. Ethan tried to slip out, but reporters, tipped off by Axel's anonymous email, blocked his path, cameras flashing. Axel stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos, calm but unyielding. "This is the truth you've been hiding," he said, addressing the crowd but looking at Mara. "You built your world on lies, fraud, betrayal, manipulation. It ends tonight." Mara's gaze met his, a mix of guilt and horror. "Axel, please," she whispered, but he shook his head, his heart a fortress. Lena, cornered by investors demanding answers, turned on him, her voice venomous. "You pathetic little man, you think this changes anything?" Axel didn't flinch, his eyes cold. "It changes everything, Lena. You're done." The fallout was swift. Victor, the investor, stormed out, vowing to sue. Reporters swarmed, their questions a barrage that drowned out Mara's stammered excuses. Ethan's creditors, alerted by the leaked financials, were already circling his empire crumbling. The gallery's reputation was in tatters, its funding evaporating as collectors pulled their support. Axel had sent the dossier to the authorities hours before, ensuring an investigation would follow. Mara, Lena, and Ethan would face legal and social ruin, their lives exposed to the world they courted. Axel slipped out as security arrived, the night air sharp against his skin. Javier waited in the parking lot, his expression a mix of awe and concern. "You pulled it off," he said, clapping Axel's shoulder. "You okay?" Axel nodded, though the weight of the night pressed against him. "I will be," he said, his voice steady but soft. He'd won, but victory was a heavy thing, laced with the ghosts of what he'd lost. The next morning, Axel packed a suitcase in the quiet house. Mara had left a note on the kitchen table, her handwriting shaky. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to stop it." He read it once, then tossed in the trash. Her apology was too late, her complicity too deep. He'd already contacted a lawyer, the divorce papers in motion. Lena's social media was silent, her name trending for all the wrong reasons. Ethan's condo was on the market, his debts swallowing him whole. The consequences were theirs to bear, a mirror held up to their choices. Axel moved into a small apartment downtown, its bare walls a blank canvas. The pain of Mara's betrayal lingered, a scar that would fade but never vanish. Yet, in its place, he felt something new, strength forged in the fire of truth. He wasn't the man who'd knelt among broken glass, nor the one who'd trusted blindly. He was Axel, reborn, a man who'd faced a trail and emerged whole. At Green Path Tech, a startup he joined after leaving his old job, Axel threw himself into work, designing software for community projects. The team respected him, their trust a quiet balm. Javier became a regular at his new place, their beers and banter a reminder that he wasn't alone. The anonymous tipster never resurfaced, their role a mystery Axel chose to let rest. They'd given him a spark, and he'd built the fire. One evening, as the city hummed outside his window, Axel stood on his balcony, the skyline a tapestry of light and shadow. He thought of the life he'd lost, Mara's laughter, their shared dreams, and let it go, like ash on the wind. The betrayal had broken him, but it also revealed him, stripping away illusions to show a man capable of more than he'd known. Justice had been served, not with rage, but with clarity, a blade wielded with purpose. He raised a glass to the stars, his reflection faint in the glass door. "To new beginnings," he said, the words a vow. The future was uncertain, but it was his, built on truth and resilience. Axel stepped inside, the door closing softly behind him, ready to write the next chapter of a life no one could take away.